I'd like to call to order, excuse me, a meeting of McKinney SAR, McKinney chapter number 63, April 20th, 2023. We have a wonderful but full agenda this evening. Thank you all for coming. And to start, first would like to have Donald Babbs, who is our chaplain. He's appearing via Zoom, who will do our invocation. If you'd all please stand.
Let us pray. Almighty God, you are our creator and our sustainer. And we come this evening to bow our heads and open this meeting of the McKinney chapter of the Sons of the American Revolution in prayer. You are our light and our fortress, and you are our wisdom and our strength. Heavenly Father, may we approach our tasks with wisdom, and may we approach our members with respect. May our conduct create an environment of cooperation and kindness. And we ask that you would bless our speakers that do tonight, and that you would bless our time together this evening. And may we grasp those things that you want us to understand. And may our hearts always be ready to respond to you and your wisdom. And we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Next, if you please join me in pledge allegiance to the United States. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Additionally, our pledge to the Texas flag. On the Texas flag,
that you
one and indivisible. And additionally, Laws, will you lead us in the pledge of the SAR? Yes. We. You can please be seated. And at this time, we have self-introductions. We only start on the left side. We're going to go around. If you wouldn't mind, please speaking in the microphone and hold the button so that some people are on Zoom here as well. You don't have to hold it. Push it down. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Peter Ford, I'm the treasurer of the McKinney chapter. Hi, Andy Wilson, McKinney chapter. Dwayne Briner, and this is my wife, Lana.
Hello, Tom said that I'm a member and haven't received my documentation from that, so I
Minor detail.
I assume I am. I think he wants to be volunteer. My name is John Bagwell. I'm a veteran of Bron Star, and I've been coming for several months. Rob Noe, the McKinney chapter.
Hi, I'm Pete McClellan, and my wife Downey, and we're from McKinney.
Lord Frederick, McKinney chapter, my first wife, Joy.
My dad, Randy, and my mom, Lori, and we're guests. Hi, my name is Barry Gordon. That's cool.
Jerry Kenny, McKinney chapter.
Racing Founders, and I am your Texas Society President-elect. Yeah, I'll hold it, remember, okay.
John Rivera, Evelyn Gerald, McKinney, Dallas. I basically was asked to be the flag committee chairman, and I'm also the chairman of Congress, Texas Conventions.
Paul Andreessen, I'm transferring into the McKinney chapter from South Carolina.
My name's Tom Foster, and I think I'm a member. I got an email the other day, so we're probably in the same class.
I'm John Ray, member of McKinney. Where to?
I'm glossary secretary. Yeah. And online we have Jack Houghton, Don Dabbs, and Bill Hurst.
Thank you.
Mark Harrison, Dallas, McKinney. You're gonna entertain the speakers.
Yes, we will.
Nathan White, McKinney chapter, former president general, my wife Wanda. Martin Morgan, as a law and my wife Taylor.
I'm Ted Wilson, Edmund Terrell, a member of the McKinney chapter, also the president of the Craig Austin Raleigh War of 1812 chapter. Anybody got a reference to 1812? We'd like to welcome you. Tom Van Foss, Dallas chapter, McKinney chapter, Plano chapter, Eastern Trinity, President Dallas chapter, and District 6 UP.
Bill Watts, Dallas, Plano, Edmonton, McKinney. I'm secretary of the chapter and.
Past color guard.
Oh, past color guard commander.
David Kinsey, member, retired officer.
You write the chat.
Thank you so much for coming. This evening, we have a wonderful program. We have a lot of other special things this evening. And I'd like to introduce Tom Milson, who is our VP of programs, but he also wears many additional hats, as y'all all know so well.
So, this is my lovely bride back here, Carol, by the way.
Thank you, sir.
You know, if you forgotten her, you wouldn't have been.
Thanks for reminding me. Hey, so we have several things on the program here tonight. Let me get out my little folder with all my stuff here and we'll talk about this. Okay. So first up, we're going to have our historical moment, and we're pretty. How's that? Is that, can you hear? All right. Okay. Yeah, historical moment, and because we've got such a busy night, it's a very short historical moment. This is something from General George Washington. General Washington's forces were pursuing the British in 1778, as the enemy was evacuated to Philadelphia. The commander-in-chief stopped briefly at Corwell's Ferry, New Jersey, and Mrs. Holcomb there asked him where he was headed. He said, "Madam," he said gravely, "can you keep a secret?" Well, it turned out that evidently, it's not written here, but obviously she was probably the town gossip. But it wasn't written in the minute, the moment here that John Greer gave us that day. Okay, and it said, and she said, "Oh, yes, I can." He said, "Well," he said, "so can I," and he continued on. I guess that's a historical moment, right? John gave it to me, and he wouldn't leave this thing astray. And anyway. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so next up, we're honored to have Elizabeth Rhodes with us tonight. Well, let me tell you a little bit about her. Elizabeth Rose graduated from the University of Nebraska at, is it Kearney? Kearney, okay, Kearney. She moved, let's see, realizing the difficulty of acquiring an historic American history job in a small town, Nebraska, she moved to Little Elm, Texas, where she began to substitute for Little Elm ISD and McKinney ISD. Thank you for that. While she was working on her Texas teaching certificate. The following school year, she began to teach her teaching career at Texas Can Academy, a charter school for high school students who have fallen behind in the traditional school setting. Thank you for that. After 2 years, she transferred into Dallas ISD, where she spent 5 years at South Oak Cliff High School and 5 years at Wilmer Hutchins High School. After purchasing a home in the city of Mesquite, Elizabeth was presented with the opportunity to teach in the same neighborhood where she lived. She is now finishing her 6th year at the Dr. Ralph H. Poteet High School and her 18th year teaching coding. Elizabeth currently teaches dual credit U.S. history, dual credit government, AP microeconomics. Her favorite subject is to teach U.S. history because she enjoys the storytelling aspect of the subject. She is passionate about exposing students to history outside the classroom, and just returned from taking a group of seniors to Washington, D.C. for 5 days. Thank you for that also. In her spare time, she works part-time for the Dallas Cowboys. All right. Okay. And for the AT&T Performing Arts Center. She enjoys traveling and spending time with her family and her dog, Eleanor. Okay, so having said all this, so why is she really here? Okay. So if that wasn't enough. So she is the state winner of our history teachers contest, okay? And so, and a little bit of the background on this, we got to hear myself and Nathan and David, I guess. Oh, and well, there's some others here that heard it too. Yep, several of them here. Anyway, she at one of the banquet luncheons that we had, she read her essay to us. Okay, and I have to tell you, she blew us away. Okay, so Nathan said to me right after that, we need to get her to come here. And so I made a phone call. So anyway, the rest of the story was that it wasn't just us that she blew away. Basically, everyone at the banquet stood up and gave her a standing ovation. So with that, I will turn it over to you.
She's well there.
It's so weird and humbling at the same time to sit through a short biography of everything that you've done. I guess to get here, that's a first for me. So thank you very much for having me. My name is Elizabeth Rose. I do teach at Dr. Ralph H. Poteet High School in Mesquite ISD. This is my 18th year, which is crazy to me because I feel like I haven't had my best year yet. I feel like that's still ahead of me, which is probably a good thing in the current educational situations here in our country. I'm very grateful and very humbled to be in front of you guys today, and I would like to read you my winning essay, if you don't mind this. It is no secret that teaching at any level in any subject is becoming increasingly difficult in present society. Students are being bombarded with instant information and technology that makes genuine learning feel like a thing of the past. Educators are facing more and more difficulties and responsibilities each year, causing teachers to ask themselves, is it worth it? Teaching history has its own set of challenges. Do you rely on a textbook? What if you find bias in that book? Do you supplement with outside sources? Are those sources board approved? Do you notify parents about their child learning about sensitive topics? Do you stick with the straight and narrow, or do you challenge your students to ask, what if? As a classroom teacher of almost 18 years, I have tried every trick in the book to capture the interest of my students. How do you make the actions of men from 250 years ago seem relevant to teenagers of Generation Z and upcoming Generation Alpha? For years, I struggled with how to make the connection until I realized that I needed to get my students to feel the emotion of history. If I could allow them to feel the anticipation, the frustration, the tension, the bravery, the victory of history, I could get them to learn and be interested in the events of the past that have shaped our country. The American Revolution is a topic that I teach to students using emotion. I gain their interest by using a point system where I allow them to earn points easily in the events leading up to the revolution. Once we complete the 7 Years' War, I begin to quote unquote tax the students for actions that they need to perform in the classroom during every class meeting. I charge them points that they have earned for things that they need to do to be successful in class. These include the use of the pencil sharpener, the use of the television to see the notes, the use of the trash can to discard anything they no longer want. These points are not affiliated with their grade. They are points that they've earned previously for attending class, for answering a question when called upon, or for completing a task on time. Students build these points towards a reward of their choice. So once the British government began to introduce new taxes to the colonists in our curriculum, I began to implement these taxes in my classroom. At first, students reluctantly paid the taxes without making the connection. Every new class day, there was a new tax that they had to pay. On that day that we were scheduled to learn about the new tea tax and the Boston Tea Party, I notified the students that if they wanted to have access to my lecture notes, they needed to pay me with their points. This sent them into an uproar. I told them that I would address questions and concerns if they would allow one spokesperson per attendance group, and they had to listen to what everyone had to say. I gave them 10 or so minutes to gather their thoughts, to form their questions. I had questions that ranged from, how can you charge us to do what we're here to do, to learn? To how can you expect us to succeed if you're not setting us up for success? I explained to them that everyone in the class had accumulated enough points to pay the new fee, and they had a choice to make. You either pay it and get access to the information, or you don't, but you have to decide collectively. I gave them time to make their decision. Together, they decided to pay the fee. We moved on with the notes, went over the information of the various acts that charge the colonist fees and taxes. We made it to the Tea Act and the events surrounding the Boston Tea Party. I could see the students starting to connect the dots. In my planning, it was my hope that a courageous student would point out the connection, and I would reveal my plan to the unsuspecting students. However, something better had happened. At the beginning of the next class, as the students walked in, they came in unusually quiet and suspicious. My plan was to share with them why I had charged them the points and then introduce the Declaration of Independence to them. A student raised his hand and asked if he could present something to me on behalf of the class. He stood in front of the classroom facing me and stated that he represented every member of the class. He pulled out a piece of paper and began to read from it. It was a list of everything that they did not think was fair with my point system and how they no longer wanted to participate. Every student signed it, even one large signature taking over the bottom space. They had figured me out. Their light bulbs were shining bright and the connections were made. They had exceeded my expectations. I went on to explain my method and how I did not think that they would have figured it out before we got to the declaration in the learning. They were proud of themselves. The emotions that they had felt allowed for deeper understanding and learning. It was more than notes from a lecture or reading from a book. It was an experience with feelings and emotions attached. Teaching students to feel history is always my goal in lesson planning. I do my best to allow my students to see history from the point of view of those who experienced it. We use and analyze primary sources to gain this understanding. We have written letters as colonial soldiers to our families, to our family members who we left behind to fight against the British. I've shown video clips of reenactments of battles to help them understand what war was like in the 1770s. Students have taken on the roles of founding fathers to recreate discussions from the Continental Congresses. And when students can immerse themselves into the point of views of those who they are learning about, that's when history comes alive. Students walk away saying things like, well, why didn't they think of, or I agree with what they did because, and I can't believe it took them that long to figure it out. To be able to visit sites like Colonial Williamsburg or to attend the SAR convention on the American Revolution would be an incredible experience. I would be able to gather primary sources to youth in the classroom, knowledge that is presented outside of the textbook, and be able to collaborate with experts that can enhance my teaching toolbox on all things American Revolution. I believe that the best learning comes from experience, and I would be able to bring this experience directly to my students as I connect them to the events surrounding the revolution. For the past 18 years, I have had the privilege of teaching United States history to over 2,500 students. When I reflect on having that many young adults who have sat with me in my classrooms over the year, I really hope that I taught them something that they have been able to take with them throughout their life. If it wasn't about the American Revolution or even about history, I hope that it was about how to view events from someone else's perspective, how to respect those perspectives, and how to learn from others. The days may be long, but the years pass by quickly, and I can only hope to have an influence on 2,500 more students as they pass through my classroom, eager to learn about the foundations of our nation. Thank you.
You want to say a word or two about what's next, or you need to do it? Okay. It's a sign sheet. Okay, so if you heard during that, toward the end, she talked about how if she had the opportunity to go to Colonial Williamsburg or someplace. So it turns out she was a winner at Texas State Convention, and now this essay has been sent up to national. Okay, so the competition gets, I guess 50 or in District of Columbia have one too. No, I don't have any. There are a lot of people that can enter they want to. So the winner at national gets an opportunity to get like a scholarship. Several year, 2-week scholarship. I think it's a week at Williamsburg.
Yeah, it's a week fellowship at either Williamsburg.
That's it, yeah.
Or Valley Forge.
There you go. And so we are all rooting for you. I know you're gonna go talk to the Dallas chapter. We're all gonna try to call people we know in other states. Saying, don't mess this up. But it's like I said, the competition's stiff, but thank you so much for coming and sharing that with you. And like I said, I hope it touched everyone here as much as it touched. This is the second time some of us heard this, and it's still very touching what you're doing. And thank you so much for what you're doing for our next generation Americans. Thank you. All right. Okay, on to our program here. So tonight we're honored to have the honorable, two honors already. Remember, I'm an engineer. I'm not a lawyer, so I struggle sometimes with speaking. Okay, so anyway, basically, Honorable John E. Schneider. Judge Schneider currently serves as an administrative patent judge with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Judge Schneider is a graduate of Lee University and Fordham University School of Law. Judge Schneider is a veteran of the United States Army, having served as an air defense officer and later as a judge advocate. Judge Schneider has published numerous articles relating to the patent law and frequently speaks about patent law, the history of patents, and military justice during the Civil War. Judge Schneider is commander of the Texas Commandery. Okay, good. Texas Commandery Military Order of the Loyal Legion of the United States. Past department commander, Department of Texas and Louisiana, son of the Union veterans of the Civil War, and past camp commander Colonel Elmer Ellsworth, Camp 18, sons of Union veterans of the Civil War. Judge Schneider is also a member of the Military Order of Foreign Wars of the United States. So without further ado, Judge Schneider, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you all for inviting me to speak to you tonight. Before I do, I'd like to introduce to you my wife, Jill, who is a member of the Dames of the Loyal Legion of the United States. Today, we're going to dive into patents during the colonial period and during the state period. I'd like to speak a little louder.
Can y'all hear me back there?
I apologize.
Can you hear back there? Or do we need to turn it up? You good? Okay.
So we're going to start with. Yes, he's gone to sleep on me.
Yep.
Throw some more in this.
Wow.
Sorry, it's an Apple and I'm a PC guy myself, so. Patents are granted under the constitutional grant. Article 1, Section 1, Clause 8 talks about securing inventors' rights to their inventions and authors' rights to their works. So that's the constitutional basis for our patent system. But this came about because of what happened during the colonial and the state period, during the Confederacy, Articles of Confederation period. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, because understanding our patent system the way we have it now, you've got to understand what led up to that. And the first patent act, which we're also going to talk about here. Right, it's me. I'm on Schneider. There we go. Back on. First patent law, first nationwide patent law, was in 1790. It was one of the first acts that Congress enacted, was a patent law. It didn't call for a 14-year term. So what we mean is, by term, that's how long you can enforce your patent rights. It's a 14-year period. It required that you give a description of your invention, talk about how to use it. We call that enablement. And in some cases, it also required, if you had a mechanical product, to actually give a model. This is an actual patent model. It's actually from the 1870s. Because a lot of the models from the early period were destroyed in a fire in 1836. This is what they look like. It would be whatever the mechanical apparatus you had to give them a physical structure of it. It was required that it had to be no bigger than a cubic foot, and they had craftsmen who were experts in using your big invention to have something that could fit into that box. It used to be that patent office had a big museum. All the patent models were on display there. And when they were examined to determine whether something was new, the patent examiners would actually wander through those halls, looking at all the mechanical inventions they could see what it looked like, and see if your two have is really inventive or different. There was one U.S. president who had a patent. Anybody got any ideas?
Yeah, Lincoln.
Sorry?
Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln. He developed it while he was a boatman on the Mississippi River. The model of his invention still exists. A replica of it sits in the Smithsonian because the original was too delicate to put on display. But basically, it's two inflatable cushions on either side of a boat to lift it off when it got stuck in the sand. But we're going to go back to the beginnings of patents in our country. So we're going to start by talking about the colonial period. And that begins in 1641. First patent law, the first patent grant was in 1641. Any idea what state or colony we're talking about? Massachusetts. That's right. This was in 1641, Massachusetts. There, instead of going to the patent office, which is what you do now, here you have an invention, you file an application with the patent office, we evaluate it. There you went and filed an individual bill with the legislature and said, I've got this great idea. I want you to grant me exclusivity for a certain period of time so I can exploit my invention and build on it for the benefit of the colony. Typically, there would be for 10 years, but sometimes it was up to the legislature in negotiation with the inventor to determine how long they wanted to do it. A lot of inventors wanted it to be in perpetuity. They said, I want it for me, I want to be able to hand it down to my children, their grandchildren. No, we're not going to let you do that. Part of the quid pro quo of patent is, we give you a limited time of exclusivity. You teach other people how to use it so that when your time is up, everybody can make and use it. There were problems, this is something we're still talking about. The scope of enforceability of the patent was limited to the actual territory of the colony. It's the same thing through to the states. Whereas now with the federal patent law we have, you can be in New York for your invention, but you can sue somebody in California for infringing it. It's still only within the US, but at least it gives you coverage in all 50 states and all the territories. Quite often there was no description. It just said, I've got this great idea for making something. They're talking about it generally, but they won't give you any detail on it. It was very, very bare bones. There was no what we call the claim. Patents these days have at the back of the patent these run-on sentences that we patent lawyers and people judges love. You people probably drive you crazy. If that's what defines your invention. Think about your deed, the property description in your deed. That's what you own and what you can kick somebody out for trespassing. The claims of the patent are the same as the terms of the deed. It's what defines what you can protect. And there was no specific remedies for infringement. So Jimmy Jones starts making the product with the same product. There was no statutory damages. There was no, you had to go to court, and maybe the court could come up with an injunction, but it wasn't automatic. You didn't know what you were going to get. So it was really sort of touchy-feely, basically just saying, here, we're granting you some exclusivity in the colony. Go do it. Hope you make some money on it. They'll leave us alone. We're going to go back and work on something else together. Massachusetts also copied from England what was known as the law of monopolies. Patent grant is a grant of exclusivity, and it's a form of monopoly power. You can block other people from doing your invention. It's a negative right. Generally, most places don't like monopolies. They want people that for free enterprise, everybody to do whatever their job is and everything else. So a patent is sort of an anathema to that. So, but it's always been recognized as an exception. So when England enacted its law against monopolies, they put a clause in there allowing for patents. Massachusetts did the same thing. This is the first mention of patent grants were granted for inventions in a U.S. legislative act. There'll be other laws we'll see coming on later by some surprising colonies, to me at least. But we'll talk about it in a few minutes. But here it is: no monopoly should be granted or allowed amongst us, but if new inventions yet as profitable to your country and for yet a short time. So limited grant only within the territory of the colony we talked about. So what colonies gave grants to? You know, the first one was in Massachusetts, 1641. A gentleman by the name of Sam Winslow. He came up with a novel method for making salt from seawater. Why is salt important? Preservatives, right? Massachusetts is a big fishing colony, got a lot of fish, you got to keep them preserved. This is going to rot pretty quick. Salting. And that goes back to Roman times. Salt was a big way to preserve it. And they gave it to him for a 10-year grant.
So we can melt the snow.
So now, who else joined the trial? Virginia, I think we sort of expect that. Connecticut, New York, big commercial centers, Maryland, South Carolina. That's the one that sort of surprises me in South Carolina. And we'll hear more about South Carolina. What state is surprisingly missing? Massachusetts, we already talked about it. Think about it. Who was one of the great inventors of the colonial period?
And Pennsylvania.
Where's Pennsylvania? Pennsylvania's not on the list.
Yes.
Well, it turns out Ben Franklin didn't like patents. I know, to me, that's surprising, but he did, just to give him the businessman that he was, right? You know, he had his finger in a lot of pies and businesses and everything else, but in fact, the governor of Pennsylvania said, Ben, we'll give you a patent for some of your inventions if you want it. He said, no. This is his response.
That is, we enjoy great advantages from the inventions of others. We should be glad of an opportunity to serve others by any invention of ours. And this we should do freely and generously. So the man who came up with the lightning rod for houses, the Franklin stove, the harmonium, I mean, John may have mispronounced that, the musical device he developed, a lot of other inventions that he had. He gave those things away. It's almost like Nikola Tesla, we've heard about so much. He had a lot of patents, but he freely licensed them to let other people build them. Ben Franklin did the same thing. As part of the general knowledge, he was happy to share his knowledge and didn't do it. So Pennsylvania, at least during the colonial period, stayed away from patents and didn't grant. But again, remember, these were all pretty much individual bills. The individual inventor would go to the legislature and say, I've got this invention, give me a patent, please, and negotiate with a committee or the legislature to get those patents. So what type of things, technologies are we talking about? I think the things we sort of expect from this period. We already talked about processes for salt, water mills. Remember, particularly up in the New England area, you've got a lot of streams and rivers. We're beginning to see not quite industrialization, but they're using it for grinding grains and what have you, putting in water mills, trying to start building the power, which we know eventually leads to the Industrial Revolution and the growth of industry, and particularly in New England, the mills that were up there. Processes for making steel, we're already starting at the metal breaking. Rice production, Carolinas, they were big rice production areas. And what we would expect, agricultural equipment. We hadn't started with biotech yet. We're not talking about plant breeding, all the wonderful things we're doing patents now, but the nuts and bolts of building the economy in this country are all there. So we now come up to beginning of the Revolutionary War. Patenting shuts down. The country had a few more things to worry about. So for about 10-year period, not much happened until the beginning of the 1780s, excuse me, when we're starting to get back into, we need to start rebuilding our economy. So starting at about 1780, we start seeing patents again. Still, it's up to the individual states. At this point, I'm sure everybody in this room knows, we're operating under the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation made no mention of patents or inventor rights. So again, they were doing what they had done in the colonial period, filing individual bills with the state legislature asking for patent grants. But again, here we have a change. Pennsylvania starts becoming active. So we're going to start seeing a lot of patents coming out of Pennsylvania, particularly in Philadelphia. So again, we're back to similar to the colonial period, it's a legislative grant, but we're starting to see the development of what we now know as modern patent law in the United States. They adopt a 14-year term for your patent, which was the term for patents in the US until the 1800s. They're starting to say specific remedies. So you're going to, if you infringe, you're going to have to pay so much for each infringing article to the guy who owns the patent. You're going to start requiring what we call written description. Describe in detail what you're doing. Just don't say, I got a new process for making salt. You got to start telling me what that process is. My great-grandfather had a patent in the 1890s from the chemical solution. He had to explain, I take so many pounds of this, I take so many pounds of that, so many pounds of that, mix it together in a vat of alcohol, and I got an insecticide solution. It's that type of detail you have to start providing. Started doing what's called a working requirement. This is actually not something that our country has, but a lot of countries have. You actually have to be practicing the invention, or we're going to let somebody else use it. Because the idea is, again, the quid pro quo, we'll give you this exclusivity, but do something with it. Or we won't take the patent away from you necessarily, but we're going to make you license someone else to practice. We're starting to have issues. How do you deal with someone operating in another state? Remember, your patent grant is only for the state you have. So what do? How do I fix that problem? Got some very creative ideas that people do that. Some states would say, okay, you get a patent for, let's say it's a new clock and it works a particular way. If someone, he makes it in New Jersey, but he brings it into Pennsylvania where you've got your patent, that can be an act of infringement. So they're starting to think about how to protect or expand the rights of individuals.
It's the same thing we have here. You make a product overseas and import it in, it may be an infringement of the US law. You start to see people start getting bundles of patents. This is one of the ways to deal with out-of-state people. They'll start saying, okay, I'm in New Jersey, but my company is in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna file a patent in all three of those states, or try to get a patent in all three states. So a lot of them better start doing that if they have the funds. That's always a big problem even today, making sure you get enough money to file for your patents. So again, we're talking about legislative bills, individual grants, limit rights. South Carolina starts to adopt a patent law. This is surprising me. I mean, I don't know much about Carolina land during the colonial period, but of all the states, the country, I think South Carolina was fairly sophisticated economy, economic wise. But it wasn't New York, it wasn't Massachusetts, it wasn't Pennsylvania. It was South Carolina starts to create a basic patent law. It did it with copyrights, and they also set out the criteria for a patent. You still had to go to the legislature for them to grant it. They start building together the criteria for what it would take to get a patent and some of the rights that you would have if you got the patent. So we have here the 14-year grant for patents. We talked about that before. Copyrights could be renewed, patents couldn't, whereas other states still had a variable term anywhere from 5 to 10 years. Again, it would be a negotiation between the individual and the legislature. For South Carolina, any patent that was issued granted by that legislature was going to be for 14 years. They started putting in what I'm calling statutory damages. This was how much you could collect from the infringer if you were able to go to court and win and show the guy infringed your patent. Damages could range anywhere from 20 to 100 pounds per device for active infringement. 20 pounds in colonial time, that's a lot of money. 100 pounds is an enormous sum. Some vendors actually did very well during this period, collecting the royalties or infringement fees. The other remedy is they can seize the infringing goods. So we now have an injunctive relief, means that the bailiff or county official would go grab those goods and quite often smash them into pieces. We do that now when we get these fake imports come in, usually under trademark and copyright law. They come in and grab your guys' watches, the fake Rolexes. They take them and lay them out and they run a steamroller and crush them. They destroy it. Pennsylvania starts requiring you to describe your invention and started printing the copies of the patent specifications. Which we do now. If you want to read someone's patent, I want to go read my great grandfather's patent. I can go online and get a copy of it. We started printing copies of it. Interesting enough, they were required to be published in both English and in German. There was a large German population, German in quotes. The documents were open to public suspension, and the idea was anybody can make it, use it. South Carolina started requiring patent models. Again, something like this. So you make a new plow, you've got to make a model of it. There's no place to keep the actual size model is. You're going to have a small one that's going to be made, it's going to be kept with the file so everybody can see it. New York also went into a description of the materials and how to make and use it. The term we now call enablement. It enables someone to duplicate information. That's something we, again, part of the requirement for getting a patent. You got to teach others how to make and use it. South Carolina had a working requirement, which you mentioned that. You actually have to be using the invention somewhere in the colony. If you don't, then you're going to have to let somebody else use it, or you might lose your patent. We talked about this a little bit, out-of-state infringement, importing goods to be an active infringement. Being able to say the products made by a patented process outside of its state could be seized as an infringement coming in. So I've got a process for drilling grain, or in this case, I believe it was gravel. We're producing gravel, even though you're making that gravel by process, and the process is what's going, that's patented. You're bringing that gravel in, that could be seized as an infringement. We talked about this. Inventors started building portfolios, or sometimes referred to as multiple patents in a number of states. The first one was a guy by the name of Guest, who had some blubber oil patents. Right, we're starting to move away from candles, we're starting to go to oil lamps. He had a patent, he was actually in New Jersey, we talked about him. He managed to win patents in both Pennsylvania and New York, as well as his New Jersey patents, so we can cover it. The other interesting group we're going to talk about here in a second are steamboat patents. Everybody thinks of Fulton as the first person to steamboat. He wasn't. He's the first one to build a practical steamboat. But there are a lot of other inventors working with steamboats, trying to protect them and get inventions for them. One of them we're going to talk about is actually very important in developing the patent system we have now. Sorry. There were two major ones that we talked about. Rumsey, he did work he was in Virginia, but he also got patents for his steamboats in Maryland and Pennsylvania. And a gentleman by the name of Fitch. He was very prolific. He had patents in New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Delaware. When the first Congress met after let me take it back. During the Constitutional Convention, or the drafting the convention, Fitch actually visited with some of the people, some of the delegates to the convention, including James Madison, who was credited with drafting the patent clause in the Constitution. He demonstrated his new steamboat to them. And they were so impressed with his ingenuity, they realized the need to protect American ingenuity, that they went back and put the clause 8 in the convention, into the Constitution, excuse me. It was passed without any argument or discussion, and it was unanimously adopted by all delegates. Fitch's demonstration of the steamboat is credited with, at least in part, impressing upon the delegates the importance of protecting inventions. Fitch also was one of the first people to go to the new Congress. Before the last state had ratified the Constitution, we were seeking patents from Congress. And I said, no, we can't be doing this individual patent stuff. That's what led to the Uniform Patent Law that we have now, 1790, and its successors. They said, we're going to create a uniform law protecting everybody's patents, create the requirements of it, and went through that. So Fitch was important both in having the patent clause in the Constitution and also in the very first Patent Act. Patent Act was like one of the first bills enacted by the first Congress. Again, what type of technology we're talking about? Clocks, machines for rice production again, spinning machines, flour mills, chimneys, and steam generators, the engines for driving the steamboats as well as everything else. This is some very early mechanical work. A lot of that machine work was actually being done by blacksmiths, molding and fashioning the metal tanks that were required to build the steam reactors. But the state patent period came to end. There was a need, obviously, for more uniform protection throughout the states, throughout the entire country. The last state to issue a state patent was New Hampshire. Actually, there is no prohibition from states granting patents. And for those who may or may not know, the Republic of Texas also had a patent law. It did grant a patent. The Confederacy granted patents. Patents have been part of American history for over 200 years, and it's an important part of the legacy. It's an important part of going forward. But because of the need to be able to get uniform coverage throughout the country, nobody applies for state patents anymore. And with that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you. Sir.
Who received the first patent for time stamp?
The first patent, I cannot remember the gentleman's name. It was in 1790, and it was for a process for making potash. At that time, the patents were issued through the Department of State. So the patent office was part of that, and there was a patent board under the original statute. And it was Thomas Jefferson, the Secretary of State, Randolph, and Knox. And the three secretaries would get together. There was a gentleman by the name of Rumson, who was Thomas Jefferson's Assistant Secretary of State, who would gather the files out and circulate it to the three of them. Each one of them had to sign off for it. Then it had to be sent to George Washington for him to actually sign the grant, and then it would be sent back to the inventor. So that lasted for a couple of years, and then the cabinet decided they didn't like to do that anymore. So then they delegated it to a patent board, and That's basically the patent office started and continued until where we are today. So that was sort of an interesting period of service, right?
When's the last time the state of Texas was the patent on anything?
And it was just before it became part of the. I'm not sure what the last date was for the Texas patent act. I'm still researching that. I just know that that they did have a statute and there were total of 9 issued. I think the last one was just before they became part of the union, but I'm not sure.
So could I still apply for Texas patent?
No, that doesn't apply.
Good try.
So currently, if you have a dispute, some type of patent dispute that's maybe a little bit unusual, could you give us an example of one of those?
There are several forms you can do. It depends upon what your role is in things. For example, if you own a patent, you think someone is using your invention without your permission. The remedy is, other than trying to negotiate with them to take a license, is to bring an action in federal district court. But, and then the other party can also say, well, I don't think your patent's valid, and then it becomes a protracted fight. I was a patent litigator before I came to the patent office. I did a lot of that. But there was a new procedure that allows you to go back to the patent office and say, you didn't have all the information you should have when you granted this patent. We want you to take a look at it. And anybody can file that. They're going to make some changes on that. There are 2 types of reviews, but that's where I get to hear the cases today. I'm part of what's called the Patent Trial and Appeal Board. We have 2 primary roles. One is to hear appeals from inventors whose applications have been rejected. So like when you go to the VA and you file your claim with the VA and initially deny it, you can go to a board within the VA to push your claim through. Or here your assessor has given you your property tax bill, and you're gonna go to the board, you're trying to get it convinced that it's wrong. Same thing, you can say, well, the examiner was wrong, you can come to the board. The board, it'll be heard by a panel of 3 judges. We're all patent lawyers, we all have technical backgrounds. My basic degree is biology, but I've worked in polymer chemistry and other areas over the years. And we'll decide whether the examiner is right or wrong. Same thing with the validity challenge. You come before us, you file what we call a petition or request for us to review the patent again. We decide whether or not we think you've got a case. If we do, then it goes forward and the 2 parties sort of battle it out in front of us, all on the papers usually. And it resolves in a decision whether we affirm the validity of the patent or the individual claims of the patent, or the patent gets canceled. So that's the process. Decisions by my board get appealed to a special federal appeals court in Washington, Board of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, and then from there goes to the Supreme Court of the United States.
John?
Sure.
How long did the patent have?
Today, the term is generally 20 years from your first filing of an application. So if I file an application today, it'll expire in 2043. There are some exceptions where extensions are granted to a patent. One is if the patent office takes too much time in reviewing your application, you can get some of that time back. And for drugs and medical devices, delays on the part of the FDA in approving your device or drug, you can get a recoup of some of that time. I worked for a client who makes a new intraocular lens. If you got cataracts and they have to take the old lens out to put a new lens in, the new design of that, it took them over 10 years to get the FDA to approve it. Now, they won't get all that 10 years added onto their patent, but they're going to get some of that added onto the patent. They finally got it approved, and it's finally out of launch. Sir.
The patent for applied for the recent year, and how many of those were granted and how many denied?
To be honest with you, I can't say. We're up to. We didn't start numbering in 1790. We didn't start numbering until 1836. Since 1836, we're now up to over 11 million patents have been issued. The growth has been exponential because my great grandfather's patent in 1890 was in the 400,000. So it's I would say there's probably several 100,000 patents applied for each year, and probably at least half those probably are granted. It takes about a year or 2 to get through the process, sometimes longer, depending upon the technology. Some groups are just overloaded with work. electronics and computer software are the big ones right now. Biotech is also rather big, but in that arena, it's generally down to about 18 months dependency, some go longer. We as the board try to get our decisions out. Sir.
What year was it that the government decided that we were gonna cancel the patent office because everything that had been with any value had already been.
Now, that's a wise tale. I've been investigating that. It was supposedly attributed to the commissioner of patents right around the beginning of the 20th century. But the fact that it was never said, it was actually, I think, a statement by, I want to say Thomas Jefferson, but it really, nothing like that has really ever really been said exactly what. The quote is that everything that the patent office would be able to shut down for 10 years because everything that could be invented would be invented. But that apparently, at least in my research, nobody actually said that. I'll be happy to, my wife and I will stay through your meeting. I'm happy to answer any more questions afterwards. And if there are groups from other areas, I'd be happy to come present it. Since it's interesting or something. We love doing this.
Okay, thank you, sir. That was very interesting. Me being an engineer, very interesting. Okay, so we have a certificate of appreciation here for the programming provided. Thank you for your support to the McKinney chapter. Excellence of the American Revolution.
Thank you.
Maybe hold that where the cameraman. Thank you. Thank you, sir. You go? Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
So now it's time for any announcements and old business. So to open it up to the floor, if anyone has any announcements. Anything that we need to address from old business. Hearing none, we'll go to new business. Does anyone have any new business that we'd like to bring up?
I guess we got the award now.
Yeah. All right. So yes, we'll go to Andy Milson now.
Thank you, Mark. Have it on good authority that this is the first time that this chapter has granted this award. So we're breaking new ground tonight. So it's an extra special pleasure for me to issue an award to an Eagle Scout because I earned my Eagle Scout in 1983, which, if you can count, was 4 years ago, which is crazy. But that program, as many of you know, is a fantastic one for learning all kinds of great things about citizenship and character and simply sticking with it and working hard at things. And so the Sons of the American Revolution has the Arthur M. and Bernina King Eagle Scout contest, which requires an Eagle Scout to write a 500-word essay and to complete a 4-generation ancestor chart. And so our winner from our chapter is William Weston Cook, and I'd like to read his essay for you really quickly. This is Claiborne Howard, a teenage soldier in the American Revolution. Growing up in Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C., I was surrounded by snake rail fences, American history, and patriotism. My family and Cub Scout pack routinely visited historical sites, and my first grade field trip was to Washington's Mount Vernon. Through these experiences, I developed a keen interest in how our government came to be, and I was especially excited to learn that my heritage had been traced back 8 generations to Claiborne Howard, soldier in the American Revolution. Born in Albemarle County, Virginia, on March 14, 1763, Claiborne Howard was just 16 years old when his first service act in the state militia was guarding British prisoners of war outside of Charlottesville in June 1779. Howard later served 7 tours as both a substitute and draftee in different areas around Virginia. His most interesting corps was his last, when he was called to action in August 1781. Under the command of Captain John Stewart, Howard marched through Richmond to Yorktown, where he remained until the capitulation of Lord Cornwallis in October 1781. Prior to the siege, Howard was chosen as one of 8 men from Stewart's company to join others from the American Army to man and manage 18 cannons and 6 mortars. As a gunner, Howard was placed directly under the command of General Henry Knox, General George Washington's chief of artillery, and Major General de Castelou, third in command of the French forces at Yorktown. During the siege of Yorktown at age 18, Howard's hearing was severely damaged from the dins of guns, carriages, or violence of explosion of gunpowder. As he was otherwise healthy, however, he chose to remain with his company. 4 days after Cornwallis surrendered, Howard was assigned as an escort and guard for the thousands of British prisoners of war during a 240-mile, 16-day journey to Winchester, Virginia. From there, Howard was discharged from guard duty in December 1781 and began the long trek back to his home in Amherst County. When learning about the American Revolution in school, I recall a little emphasis being given to the young ages of some soldiers. Now, at age 17, I find it incredibly difficult to comprehend what life must have been like for teenage Claremont Howard during the American Revolution. The idea of marching prisoners over 200 miles is unfathomable. To think that Howard then had to somehow manage his way home from Winchester, which would have been roughly 100 miles on foot during the winter and over the Blue Ridge Mountains, is unbelievable. I wonder whether later in life, Claremont Howard ever truly appreciated his impact as a teenage soldier and the importance the siege of Yorktown had in the foundation of our country. I certainly hope he did, because I'm truly thankful for his military service, and I'm especially proud that he is my ancestor. So I'd like to welcome Weston Cook and his parents, Randy and Laura, to come forward.
Oh, thank you guys so much.
Surprise. Great, thank you for your guys so much.
Thank you, parent.
We also have some additional very special awards this evening, and ask Judge White.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I'm sorry that Elizabeth Rose had to leave after the program. I sure hope that she is successful in being chosen as the national winner of the history teacher contest. I think she has an excellent chance. Don't we all wish we had a history teacher that was not an assistant football coach and who truly was interested in history. Judge, I enjoyed your presentation. I have run across in my family history my grandfather, who was an itinerant printer most of his life, actually had a patent that was approved, and I have a copy of that for my family history. Now, I heard all the organizations that you're connected with that you said, did somebody say Sons of the American Revolution?
No, sir, we're going back to 1836. We're working on it.
Well, I hope you can find somebody, because we always need new members. High caliber like yourself. All right, it is my pleasure to make a number of presentations, and for the first, for those of you who may be guests and not members of the Sons of the American Revolution, one of the most important, in addition to our youth contest
and you just heard about the Eagle Scout Award, is our service to veterans. And we have a couple of our members who are absolutely outstanding servants to veterans. One is John Greer. You all are, you know John. But tonight we're recognizing a real hero in the service to veterans. And I'm going to read you just a little bit about what Brigadier General T.L. Holden, who's one of our members, became a member of the SAR in 2010 and has been serving the veterans in this area for many years with recent events that include the Medal of Honor Parade. And I'm not going to name every year, it's just about every year that they've had that. The Audie Murphy Parade, the Veterans Day Parade, grave marking of patriots, ancestors 2019, 22, and 23, Memorial Day recognition, wreaths across America, veterans funerals, about 10 SAR members who are veterans and whose funerals he has attended. Veterans funerals in the DFW area, too many to list. The Dallas policeman who was a veteran killed in an ambush buried at DFW. A number of events at the Bonham facility, hospital, VA, in he's been a cook for over 8 times, Christmas parties 8 times, regional VA programs 5 times, the Clyde Cosper state-run veteran home twice, donations, financial donations to the VA in Bonham. Several years ago, a program was started to recognize our Vietnam veterans by providing Vietnam veteran lapel pins to organizations, including the SAR. To date, TL has presented over 1,200 of those pins to veterans who served on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces during the Vietnam War era. I'm happy to be one of those recipients myself. For TL's dedication to serving our veterans, I am very honored to present him with the SAR Distinguished Service Medal. And TL, if you'll come forward at this time. Presented to TL Holden, Service to Veterans Medal in grateful recognition of outstanding service rendered to the United States Armed Forces veterans this 20th day of April 2023. TL, you earned it. And we're so glad you're one of us. Thank you very much.
All I can say is thank you. And there's a lot of other people that are helping on this project.
Did you get the medal? Thank you. You get the medal? Yeah. See it. Get the medal. They want to get photos.
Okay, go there.
Go name. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Judge, did you get him the medal? We get fortunate for this. If I remember. I didn't have time to remind you. There is a large medal and a miniature medal for service to veterans.
Thank you.
Some of you will remember the day when we didn't have this many members, much less this many members in attendance. But I want to give you a little history. This chapter was chartered in November of 2002, a little over 21 years ago. That's a little over 20 years ago. But we fell on hard times, and in January of 2017, just 6 years ago, the state board of managers were considering a motion to disband and remove the charter, take the charter back from the McKinney chapter. And I became aware of the proposed action and said, no, we can't do that in Plano, in McKinney, Texas. We cannot do that in McKinney, Texas. This is a growing area. We have too much potential, and was able to persuade the state president to withdraw or remove that proposal from being considered. And of course, Mike Ratcliffe was president at the time, and he basically said, well, big boy, if you think you can do something with that chapter, I'll appoint you president. And so we did. Tonight, we're going to recognize with the Distinguished Service Medal some folks who have helped make this transition from those days to these days by their efforts and their work on behalf of this chapter. Now, those of you who are familiar with the Officer's Handbook or the SAR Handbook will know that there is a complete section about medals and awards. And at the national level, we have the Minuteman Award, which is the highest award that this National Society can give. There is at the state level, the Patriot Medal is the highest award that the state can give. At each of those two levels, there is a Distinguished Service Medal that the President General can present during his term of office. The state president can present a Distinguished Service Medal at the state level. And then in 2013, they passed a rule or regulation at the national level that for a chapter president can name a recipient of the Distinguished Service Medal for each year that he has served as president. So tonight we're kind of making up for lost time, and we're actually going to present 6 medals for the 6 years in 2017. 2017. And I am very pleased tonight to present 2 medals, one for the first year that I was president of the chapter, and another for the second year that I was president. This is a very beautiful medal, a large medal and a miniature medal, accompanied by a certificate. And I will tell you that in that first year that we resumed operation or resumed in operation, I thought that one of the main people and members of our organization that really did yeoman work, and it was in the capacity of the registrar, the person that absolutely processed a number of applications. And I think he had a lot of help from his wife, to tell you the truth. But so I am very pleased tonight to recognize and present the Chapter Distinguished Service Medal to Dwayne Brown. Dwayne? Here is a large and small medal. Here is the certificate. And even though health reasons have kept Dwayne from being as active as the last 2 or 3 years as he would probably like to have been, I didn't forget that in the first year, he was absolutely essential to our operation.
Thank you. And my biggest reward is meeting a lot of great people in the chapter. And so I thank you very much. Thank you.
We need a picture.
By total assistance of my wife, who is a great general.
I think everybody that's connected with an operate with a chapter will know that succession is absolutely essential for a successful chapter. And it's one thing to have a good year, but it's even better to have succeeding years, and you're able to look back, and you're able to look at the chapter and say, this chapter could get along without me being president. And that's where we were with our going into our second year. We had a young man who not only did a great job as president and as a succeeding president, and essential to the operation of that second year, he also became the state treasurer. So David Kinsey, if you'll come forward. About assure all of you that we couldn't have done it without David being not only a great assistant to me, but a successor of great note.
Thank you, sir.
Following David, following me in my year as president, as I just indicated, David Kinsey became our president. And we did not present, or the Distinguished Service Medal was not presented during his 2 terms as in office. So at this time, David is going to make a presentation.
Don't go too far with it. So, as he said, I succeeded PG White. You know, it's taken over as a chapter president's enough. You're falling behind a PG. Especially when you're new, like I was at the time. There's a lot of things I had learned from it, I looked up to. But a lot of you in this room also were valuable to me in my time coming down, spending other time with you. But that first year, those phone calls, he always took every call I ever did. He called me back if he wasn't available immediately. There were even during the Zoom times, he's in chambers Zooming me, so we could get things done and move along and giving advice. And I treasure that very much. So PG White, thank you.
Remixes. It's better to give than to receive, but I'm happy to receive it.
So, you know, there is always people behind you pushing, be it your spouse, be it your best friend, other guys, patriots. And you also rely on other people to delegate to that are willing to help you out and come in there. And is always available. And so I would like to recognize Tom Nelson.
Thank you so much.
And with that,
Carol.
Thunder. Oh, that was really cool.
I was a little good there.
Oh, my gosh.
So. So it's the same sort of thing, so I joined the SAR, I guess, probably around 4 years ago, and Nathan is the one that inducted me. And within about 2 or 3 months, he told me, we need a secretary. And I think you're the guy. And I said, I have no idea what to do. And he said, that's all right, it's an easy job. Right, and so anyway, and I said, well, what's going on? He said, well, David's gonna move up and be president, and you know, you need to move up and be secretary. So I thought, well, this is okay, how bad can it be? And it turned out to be really great, and
Yeah, love you.
that's right. And David did a lot of the work, and I learned a lot, and I helped him where I could, and you know, carried the flags in, flag stands and all that stuff. And so everything was good there, and then after he served his 2 years, David came to me and said, basically, well, you gotta be the secretary now, I mean, president now. And I said, what? He's looking at me funny, so he's the wife is member. And I said, well, I don't know anything about that job. He said, oh, it's not, let's do it. And so anyway, so long story short, so that's how I got into all of this. When I first got in, again, worked with Dwayne for a while. And then Dwayne had some health issues, which worked through. But then we got to the stage where we had to continue to grow the chapter. So we had to find some people to help us do all of the application. And this first gentleman, he was supposed to be here, but at the last minute, he's trying to sell his house, and so he wasn't able to come. He was on Zoom, but he didn't know about this, but it's all. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you about this, and then we'll get this to the. So basically, the guy that came to my aid and still comes to my aid when I'm trying to help our registrar do some things is William Hurst, Bill Hurst. Bill has always been there. He's always helped at the local level, the state level, and the national level. Okay, when you had a problem, you know, Bill, I don't know what to do here. He would always come help us. We turned out a lot of applications during that period of time, and a lot of it was due to his work. So anyway, I'm sorry he didn't make it. Like I said, we had a plan, Teal and I had a plan. There was 2 reasons behind my plan. If you hadn't figured that out by now, Teal, I ought to make sure you were here too. But anyway, but at the last minute, basically he said he couldn't come. So we'll do that, and we'll honor him again another time. But that was the first one. And then the second one for my second year was a guy that just sort of like was the solid rock that you could always go to and say, I got some problems here, I need some help here, can you cover that, can you cover this, blah, blah, blah. So this gentleman is a charter member of the McKinney chapter. He's been here basically before my time. Nathan assured me he was very consistent coming to the meetings and helping and doing what he needed to do. Been the state treasurer. Is that right? Thank you. Yep, state treasurer at one point in time. And anyway, so and like I said, every time I asked him to do something, and I think the most memorable one was as I asked him to be a part of basically being a judge in an oration contest for Mark here. And I called him up, and I said it was sort of short notice, and I said we need a judge oration contest. He said, well, that sounds pretty good. And I said, okay, that's good. And it's going to be, you know, basically on this certain day. He says, oh man, that's right in the middle of summer. As I recall, it was a football game you were wanting to watch. And he said, well, okay, maybe we can work both of them. Then I said, well, you're going to have to drive to Carroll, Texas, from McKinney to do this. And he said, oh, okay, I'll do it. Just like that, okay? There's a lot more of those things. He's helped me because he's been the sergeant at arms and he corrects me, which I need a lot of correcting, right? Every time I do something. So Peter, would you come up here? Peter McClellan. The other reason he's sergeant at arms, he's bigger than me. If I don't do it quite right, I'm always wondering when I might do something here. Nothing else. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Back to you, right? Yes.
Yes, sir.
I may, I'd like to make one comment about these awards and what the judge said about. Reestablishing in 2017. You have not noticed the two blue notebooks over here on the table that Tom's been passing around. In our last state meeting this last month, first of this month, this chapter in group 2 was named outstanding chapter in the state. Wow. A lot of
Thank you. And just echoing for a minute what each of these gentlemen have said, I think our chapter has grown exponentially. People have put in a lot of work, a lot of different areas, and I'm not the youngest guy, I guess, now, as far as the workforce goes, but being here, I see, and I've seen for a long time the importance and the value of hard work and service to others. And I think that our chapter has done an excellent job at that, and hopefully we will continue to do that in the future. Now turning to our, I guess the next matter, which would be our minutes that Carrie has posted to the website. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to look at those. Anyone have any questions about the minutes from the past meetings or any motions concerning minutes?
I'll make the motion to set them as written.
Okay, Tom Mills for the motion. Yes, sir. And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next, the treasurer's report. Your report, please.
That work?
Yes.
All right, here's the treasurer's report for April 20, 2023. As of the last meeting, our available balance was $6,686.35. There was no activity this month. All outstanding transactions are cleared. The bank balance is $6,686.35. Any questions? Thank you.
Do we have any additional business or anything else from the floor? Anybody would like to raise? All right, seeing none. Don, are you still with us? Don Babs?
Yeah. Oh, unmute, Don.
If you could each please stand for the benediction.
Can you do it?
Are we ready for the benediction?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's pray. Father, we thank you for this time of unity during this meeting. We thank you for the building of friendships and those you have positioned perfectly to work together for the success of this chapter. Thank you for the ideas that have been spoken and for those who willingly contributed their thoughts and ideas. So, Father, fan into flames the gifts which is in us and reveal your truth to us each day. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
And now for the recessional. Until we meet again,
Let us remember our obligations to our forefathers, who gave us our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and independence, freedom of court, and the nation of free men.
we are adjourned.
Right.